Buttercups, buttercups, buttercups. We're doing yet another square of our beloved Savannah, Georgia. This week, we're going to be talking about Columbia Square. All right, are you ready? Let's go. Well, like always, we are going to start with the history of Columbia Square. Now, we know it's named after somebody, some man that can be influential, right? Well, originally, this square earned its name after the poetic personification of Christopher Columbus himself. This is also like the District of Columbia, D.C., and other areas across the country. Preservation wise in Savannah, Columbia Square had another claim to fame as it was the location that truly spurred the necessity for historic preservation. Savannah at one point wanted to modernize, and they were trying to take out a lot of the city's historic houses. And in the 1940s, there was even a movement to convert the squares to something to make it more modern. But in 1946, they did deny this, thankfully, and this is why we have Columbia Square today. And another almost victim of modernization was one of the houses in the square. This house is built slash born around 1820. Davenport House was the first home to Isaiah Davenport, his family, and their enslaved servants. Despite its stately origins by the early 20th century, Davenport House found itself in the midst of one of the seediest parts of town. It was a rooming house and fell into disrepair, and for lack of a better term, it was just a rundown old property with hints of an elegant past. This property was deemed to be demolished in the early 1950s, and if you didn't have a group of local furious people, then that would have been the case. But luckily, they 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 said no. This group of like-minded individuals band together to purchase the house themselves. This save would be the first act of dun dun dun, the historic Savannah Foundation. This continues today to keep historic properties from facing ruin. And as for this area of downtown Savannah, it is now the largest urban historic district in all of the United States. Think United States. Did I say steaks? Maybe I'm hungry. I don't know. But I digress. Thanks to these women and some of their male friends, the Davenport house was saved from meeting such a terrible, fateful end. Now, the eventual result of this movement was the creation of the Historic Savannah Foundation. It has saved over 1,200 buildings. Over 400 of these over 400 of these properties were actually built prior to the Civil War. So this is going to dictate that Savannah is one of the oldest and most important historical locations in the country. Many of these buildings now form the backbones of I don't even like mint juleps, but maybe that's what I'm thinking. Many haunted ghost stories. This is why we can have ghost tours, y'all. I mean, when a house faces ruin, no doubt all the property spirits have a new tight grip on the afterlife, right? Let's make it work. Now, some facts: this is located on Habersham Street, bracketed by State and York Streets, and it is extremely haunted. The square itself could remain ghost free as far as we know, but the houses dotted all around the plot of the square, they're not so ghost free. Just saying. On to the ghostly residents of Columbia Square. Now, just a thing to know, this square does border an area to the east known as the Eastern Commons. This housed a collection of boarding houses, taverns, bordellos, grog shops, shacks, and small mercantile operations throughout most of the 19th century. This may give one to who is maybe haunting the areas around, right, guys? So, dozens of Irish families lived in the Davenport house during and after the potato famine years, and they often mingled and socialized with the African Americans and Germans in such places of the 1790 in. You know, I think we talked about that. This was a gourmet restaurant downstairs with quaint rooms upstairs. Well, that's what it is now. It was once a boarding house for a rollicking group of sailors, shipbuilders, and laborers. Interesting. This is also the home of one of Savannah's most famous ghosts, a female spirit named Anna, or Anne. You know, our little Irish servant who came over. Yeah, room 204. Mm-hmm. Now, there is a version that I don't know we talked about where she fell in love with a German sailor who promised to marry her when he returned from sea. But, like all tragic, ghostly love stories, he never returned. So one lonely night, she sat upstairs weeping about her loss and just decided she could not continue living without him. So she stood, crossed the room, and leapt from the window to the street below, leaving her with no chance of survival. Her neck snapped, and her death was immediate. But unfortunately, as we discussed, there is absolutely no evidence of who this Anne slash Anna is and what truly happened. But it does take a very interesting toll, does it not? But we're not going to leave the 1790 Inn as the only such haunted place on Columbia Square. There is a place known as the Kehoe House. I'm going to say that maybe I mispronounced that. If I did, please don't come after me. I am very sorry. This sits adjacently to the green, is rumored to be one of the most paranormally active houses in the historic district. This was built in 1892 for the family named it was named after it. The rumors of death at this property have circulated for years, though. One such story is that of two of the two children, young children, getting stuck in the chimney of the house for hours, days. The mother wandered as she tried to find her young children, but she smelled something really bad in the chimney, and they say, obviously the children perished. But rest assured, it's not true. Even though they want to repeat it, it's not. There are eerie sounds of children playing, heard by guests of the bed and breakfast, even if no kids are playing or present. Maybe it's residual energy of children who did once live there. But you should not feel nervous if you feel a cool hand whisper through your hair as you sleep. It is definitely more spiritually and paranormally charged than some of the other houses. Now, another haunted property of this square is none other than the Davenport house. This is, as we talked earlier, it was the start of the preservation movement. They say the spirit of a young girl has been seen on the property, although they don't know her identity. It could have been a woman staying at the property during its time of a boarding house, as she is seen ascending the stairs or glancing out the windows. So it just kind of depends. And I'm sure you'll see more that people just don't always talk about. Now, there is a more reported activity, and this one I would love to see. It relates to an infamous ghost cat. It has been seen in the windows, running across the yard, scampering room to room. However, as there is no cat at the Davenport house, we'll just have to assume that this feline had some unfinished business when they passed away. Now, interestingly enough, I am an animal person. And so for me, that would draw me to this place more and more simply for the fact that it's a cat. It's a cat. I'm good with that. And even as I record this, I have one sleeping behind me. Now, to go back to the Kehoe house a little bit more, it was built in 1892 for William Kehoe and his family. And it is known that some of their children did pass away in that house. So there's no coincidence that there are ghosts of children there. Probably, like we had just said, it's the residual energy of the kids playing. And that makes more sense. We know that many children have lived in that home well before it was known as a haunted bed and breakfast. So it could be other children as well. There's no guarantee. And they don't really interact with the living. They just like to play amongst themselves, which, I mean, if you think of children, it totally makes sense. So it could be a residual haunting. Now, another thing you're going to see in that home, or I'm sorry, smell, is perfumes from an age past. And they could waft through the hallways or the bedrooms. That there's no really good explanation of this. It could be that, at least in my opinion, there is a spirit who doesn't want to be seen. So they're like, hey, you can smell me, you just can't see me. And I smell good. Now, one thing is that there is at least one ghost here who seems to be more intelligent than the others, or maybe they just care that they can recognize the living and can interact with them. So it could explain why guests of this house report that feeling of someone touching them while they're asleep. It's possible. Now, could it be alarming? Yeah, if you're not expecting it. I mean, who's going to be expecting to be grabbed by a ghost while you're trying to sleep or, relax or sleep or anything? But I can say that honestly, if you go to this place, then it would make more sense that you're into the whole ghost stuff. So if you want to take and hang out with some ghosts at the Keogh House, you can go to 123 Habersham Street on Columbia Square. It's not open to the public, so don't go, you can't actually just go and explore. But maybe if you do book a room in this bed and breakfast, you might get to see some of the ghosts. I find it super, super interesting that they choose to mess with people in terms of like when they're sleeping. I mean, I guess if I was a ghost, I'd do the same thing because it would be kind of fun. But I mean, that's sort of just me. You know, honestly, I'd be the one though to be mess with your music. I'll be so honest. Then we talked about the Davenport house. Now, the Davenport house is where a lot of the poor Irish went. And that's, it's going to hold a special place in your heart. This is a historical gem. And that's really why the Historic Savannah Foundation started. So it has a federal style architecture, and its all around grandeur is just one side of its coin. And thanks to the preservation efforts, there's so many more generations that are going to be able to see this and explore this if you're into the ghost stuff. And it's beautiful. Now you're going to find it on the northwest corner of Columbia Square at 324 East State Street. I'm trying to say that 5 times fast. Now, these days it's a museum. So you're going to probably have more access to this as a member of the public. Now, they do say that it was completed in 1820, but it didn't appear on any tax rolls until 1821. So, yeah, kind of wait on that. And one of the great things about this place is that its builder, Isaiah Davenport, became known as Savannah's master builder. He is a mysterious man in Savannah's history because there are no known portraits or description of this guy. And he was a very secretive, private person. So there's not much to know. The first fine example of his work in Savannah, though, is Laura's Cottage. And that was constructed in 1808. You can see brilliancy in the craftsmanship. This would bring him notoriety and great success. And let's be honest, there were no power tools then. So this New Englander's skills were so superior, no other builder could possibly match up to him. He was a legend in his field due to his obsessive desire for perfection, which makes sense. His work ethic created that standard and simultaneously the staple tradition that other builders would follow in developing Savannah as the grand city that we know it today. He constructed many awe-inspiring homes during his career, and his own house was his masterpiece. It is considered the pinnacle of Georgian architecture. And this is kind of ironic considering that Isaiah was, from Rhode Island. His career was a testament to an era when builders worked with their hands. Homes and buildings that have now stood the test of time. And so, just what we know about Isaiah Davenport. He was born in Rhode Island, Little Compton, on November 3rd, 1784. As a young man, he apprenticed under a carpenter in New Bedford, Massachusetts. These formative years were very crucial in his mastering of the craft. At 24, he was comfortable in his abilities, so he made a bold move, leaving the only life he'd ever known, packed up all of his belongings, and made the journey to Savannah, where great adventure and success would await him. In 1808, that's when he arrived, but official records don't show him as a resident until the next year, 1809. Later that year, he married Sarah Rosamond Clark. The New England married the Georgia Peach at the Independent Presbyterian Church. Woo! They were so madly in love that they had 10 children together. Sadly, only 6 of their kids survived childhood, but they do believe that those 4 departed children still haunt the house to the very day. Despite his personal losses, he continued on with his work. And maybe the reason he was so successful was because he did immerse himself to cope with the grief. And he did still have a house full of children, 6 others to provide for, and that was difficult in itself, I'm sure. He was the go-to guy for the city of Savannah. He proudly served as a contractor for the city many times. His most notable contribution was his work in restoring Savannah's historic squares. He was called upon after the Great Savannah Fire of 1820, where he was in charge of building temporary housing for many displaced citizens. His eye for detail, flawless work caught the attention of the federal government eventually, and he was contracted to build a Martello Tower on Tybee Island for coastal defense. This was a safety measure constructed to protect against any would-be attackers. He did amazing things. This man was never content with his talent and the art he had created. He wanted more. His partnership on city and federal projects further drove his aspirations. He got more involved with city politics and eventually threw his hat into the political ring. From 1817 to 1822, he served as a city alderman. And guys, if that is not enough, he became a firemaster for the wards of Greene and Columbia. He would later become top off his political and civil service in becoming a constable for the Columbia ward. So look, this man did so much, and it was impeccable. It would have been amazing to see what he could have done had he not fallen victim to yellow fever. And unfortunately, on October 16th, 1827, at just 43, he perished. You have to wonder if he did all these amazing things because it was in his soul contract that he would pass due to yellow fever. His body was laid to rest at Colonial Cemetery for a spell before later being exhumed and interred at Laurel Grove Cemetery. 1 month after his death, his 10th child was born, a boy named Dudley. Sadly, like his father, Dudley would die young too. He died at the age of 40 in 1867. Now, after his passing, his wife needed additional support, so she converted their home into a boarding house. She was now a widow with 6 children to support. So she did what she had to do, and they remained on the property until 1840. So 13 years later, she had a difficult decision to face. She couldn't maintain her beloved home. This is the home that her husband had poured his heart and soul into. But as with everything else, there's an ending. And when she had to sell her house. She ended up selling her house in 1840 for $9,000 to Baynard and his family, who arrived to Savannah from Hilton Head, South Carolina. Now, I think the Baynard family must have known or felt some kind of pride because that house remained in the Baynard family for over a century. In 1955, it was sold for a second time, and it's 135 years of existence. And it could have, they wanted to tear it down, and this is exactly why the Historic Savannah Foundation purchased it in 1955 as their first act of preserving the history of Savannah. They turned it into their headquarters later that year, as well as an agency for family services. Seeing the promise that the Davenport still had, they also began restoring the home. In 1963, they opened the first floor of the Davenport as a museum to open to the public. And as the renovation process continued, the upper levels of the home, they opened up to the entire house to the public. So they moved their headquarters to a new building. So this home, turned into a boarding home, not just a boarding home. I think it was a safe place for people to go, and Sarah needed the money, but it was a way to encourage a safe home. Then a museum. And it was just great in terms of how everything else worked. Now, we talked about the ghostly cat We know all dogs go to heaven, and I'm going to say that probably all animals do. This cat apparently didn't want to leave. And it's a curious little cat, I guess. And it's usually during museum hours. And I think it's really cool because visitors will often catch a glimpse of the cat as it darts from room to another. It's like he's chasing a ghost mouse. Other people have spotted the cat sitting on the windowsill, standing regal, and watching people from his station. He's guarding the house. He's being a statue cat. I have one of those. And although he serves as the guardian as the Davenport house, you might think to yourself, well, no, maybe I'm saying things. It truly is a immortal cat. He's protecting this house. This is his territory. Now, we talked about the kids. Well, they're saying that research says that there is a little girl. She has frequently been seen roaming through the house and the gardens outside the main residence. And like the cat, she has also been seen in the windows, usually on the upper floors. She looks down over the street, over the people who pass by, and sometimes this includes people on ghost tours. There has been at least one occasion where she has been, though, seen in the daytime tour, playing in the attic. And the fact is that, I mean, we don't know who she is. Could she be a Davenport child? Possibly, because Ford did die at a young age, but it did serve as a boarding house. So we don't really know, and it may never come to light. But the fact is that maybe her and the cat are just chilling. I think it's really really cool, and I mean, I am the I like this kind of stuff. Just makes me happy. Um, I think it's really cool when you have uh such things happen for the simple fact that at the end of the day, I wouldn't have an issue being someone um who could see all this. How cool is it to know that even though their bodies are no longer here, that you're still here? And truth be told, if I'm being really honest with you guys, I'm a ghostly ghoul. I'm a ghostly groupie. Just facts. I would love to hear what you have to say. Have you been there? Is there some stories that you can say? Is there anything you can relate to? I'd love to hear it. As far as this ghostly groupie goes, I love it. And I love it, love it, love it.